I'd like to call this meeting to order, which is a regular meeting of the Village Board on Monday, June 21st at 7 p.m. in the Germantown Village Hall Boardroom and also can be accessed via WebEx. This meeting has been given public notice in accordance with sections 19.83 and 19.84 of the Wisconsin statutes in such form that will apprise the general public and news media of subject matter that is intended for consideration and action. Roll call shows all village board members present. At this time, I will ask us all to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. To the flag, States of America. Stands. Thank you. Next item is President's report. Couple things to report tonight. Was fortunate enough to partake in the Big Boy event that happened last Thursday. For those that were there, thank you for coming. For those that weren't able to make it, it was a celebration of Big Boy's 98th birthday. He didn't look a day over 20. But they had 98-cent hamburgers there. It was very well attended. At any one time, there was probably 350 to probably 450 people there. There was a line through the parking lot for people that waited for the opportunity to get their 98-cent Big Boy hamburgers. So all in all, a very successful event, and I appreciate the corporation of Big Boy coming forward and helping to put that together, along with Chaz Hastings, who is the owner of that restaurant group there. I'm sorry? I thought it was 98 cents. Was it 89 cents? That would be my dyslexia coming out. I apologize. The other thing that I attended was tonight we had the Fireman's Park Pavilion, a dedication and ribbon cutting. If you haven't had a chance to see the new pavilion that's over at Fireman's Park, it's just a little bit south of the outdoor performing arts pavilion. It's very nice. It's almost done. There's a couple of small touches here and there and a punch list to go through, but overall, it turned out very well. And we thank everybody that was involved with not only the decision to go through with that building, but also the help to get it where it is today. So thank you, everybody in the Park and Rec Department, all development group, and the Village Board for this opportunity to present this building to the residents for their future use. My understanding is there's 2 weekends in July that it's already booked for use. So it's starting off on a great foot. You'll have an opportunity to see it if you go to the 4th of July event at Fireman's Park on Sunday, July 4th. That building will be open and available for everybody that's there to walk through it and take a look at it. It's very nice. So appreciate that. The last thing that I have to report is I'm getting contacted by Germantown residents via email or phone call about the school board and their decision to relook at the SRO officer for Kennedy Middle School. The people that are contacting me are asking me to make sure that we don't remove those monies from our budget, and I have reaffirmed with them that I have no plan of removing that money from our budget. And right now it's the Germantown School Board that's considering changing how that agreement is in place. We do have a memorandum of operation with or understanding, I should say, with the school board on the SRO officer. It's something that they brought forward to us and asked us to put together, and that agreement has been signed and in place and renewed for at least 7 years or better, I would imagine. But they're looking at their budget right now and looking for ways to save money. And one of the ways is for the non-funding of the SRO officer. To everybody that's listening and everybody that's here, it is my intent not to have that officer be removed, and whatever we can do to help support that, I'm willing to look at and talk about and see how we can continue to have that officer in place. I think it's important, especially in the middle school where the kids are a little more subjective to drugs, alcohol, and truancy. And I think the earlier that we have an officer involved in helping to stop any of that, the better it is, not only for our students, but for our residents and family as well. So we will look at different opportunities, and I've directed Steve Krecklow to continue to talk to the superintendent and the village board, the school board president, to see how we can work that out and still be able to retain an SRO officer at Kennedy Middle School. That's all I have to report tonight. So then we can go to announcements of forthcoming events of public interest, committee and department reports. We'll start with committee reports and committee chairs with trustee Rick Miller.
General Government and Finance met just prior to this meeting and will meet next on Monday, July 19th at 6 o'clock.
The first Monday in August or July? In July, which is, Madam Clerk?
Sorry. The public safety meeting, it was decided it would be held on July 13th because July 5th is considered a holiday for us. So July 13th, it's a Tuesday.
Okay, and then trustee Kaminsky.
Public Works will meet in this room at 6 p.m. on Wednesday, July 7th.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else that has anything else for announcements of forthcoming events of public interest, committee or department reports they'd like to bring forward? Yes, Administrator.
There we go. All right, sorry, getting used to the new equipment. I just want to, while all of the trustees are here, introduce one more time Aaron Hearn, our new support services manager who is joining the village as of today, and someone who you'll be seeing around for future meetings. Aaron is joining us from a prior position in Mineral Point, Wisconsin, and also a position for several years in Brown Deer. So she comes to us with a great deal of experience, and I think is going to be a great asset to the village staff.
Great, welcome. Next item is a citizens input and public appearance on items not subject to a public hearing. There are no public hearings on tonight's agenda. If there's anyone in our audience or joining us via WebEx that would like to come forward for citizen input or public appearance, you're welcome to do so. All I would ask is you please come to the podium and state your name and your address for the record. Yes, ma'am. I can take. Thank you for filling it out.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. You have spoken to what my topic is this evening already. My name is Teresa Schneider. I live on Oakview Avenue. She has my address. My name is Teresa Schneider, and I'm a 9-year village resident and a parent of kids at KMS and JHS. While most of my counterparts are over at the school board meeting tonight, I'm headed there next. I was asked to come and speak to you on behalf of all of the concerned parents in the district, as well as many of the staff members at KMS, and I'm happy to do it. You have reassured me greatly, but I did prepare it, so I'm going to read it.
Absolutely.
Okay. In 2018, when the second SRO position was approved for the middle school and Officer Pierce was added, the community responded in kind and was grateful to have another officer watching out for our kids during the confusing and dramatic middle school years. With the disturbing amount of social unrest in the last few years, having a highly visible symbol of honor, dignity, and protection for the kids has proved to be a hugely positive effort and effect on our students. Over the last 4 consecutive years with kids at KMS, I've had the privilege of seeing Officer Pierce interact with the kids, once with mine directly as a result of a cell phone theft, and she is nothing short of wonderful with each one of them. I have seen her climb a ladder to help take down 8th grade dance decorations to help the parents out. I have seen her effectively de-escalate a discipline issue with nothing more than a disapproving look and a stern word. I have seen her and Officer Olson at every major high school event, game, dance. They are wonderful and they are a great team, and we are lucky to have them both. The students love her, the staff love and appreciate her, and the parents sleep better at night knowing that she is on patrol. With the administration shifting and the dean's position being eliminated, the acting dean is now moving to the role of vice principal. He will now be stretched even further dealing with any and all disciplinary actions, in addition to his regular duties. We, the parents, were told last month it's a possibility she would be removed as the SRO. And came to find out 2 days later, she was cleaning out her office. We were not happy. One of the staff that I spoke with at 8th grade graduation said that they had over 50 signatures of KMS staff asking to keep her position, and it was simply dismissed by the school board. I hate to say, I'm not surprised. Our school board is a mess. There's no other way to say it. The move to eliminate this position was done out of foolishness, pride, in a closed session spearheaded by a former PD employee and board member whose reputation is well known. It was done without consideration of the safety of any of our students. As it was a closed session and the open records request has not been approved as of this afternoon, the parents would like you to keep this on the table and strongly encourage the school board and the village board to go back to the table and come up with a compromise that would allow the Germantown PD and the school district to find a middle ground for pay in this position. We know it all boils down to cash flow, and unfortunately, the district mismanaging funds is now putting the village and the police department in the middle of this fight. We, the parents of Germantown, ask you to come together and help balance out the problems that have been created through no fault of your own, and help our school figure out a way to keep her full-time at KMS. If you take nothing away from my plea tonight, please remember this. People are moving to Germantown for the safe and amazing schools. The lack of issues at our high school is a direct effect of the lack of issues at our middle school because of the 2 full-time SROs. In a world of scary school issues across the country, we need to be proactive, not reactive. Thank you.
My goal. Mike is on. I'm sorry. It is my goal to look for ways for we can work out with the school board in order to keep the SRO officer in place. And so we will, you're welcome. And thank you for coming forward. Is there anyone else that would like to come forward for citizen input or public appearance? Anyone else in the audience or anyone else that has joined us via WebEx? No? Okay, then we'll go on to the next item on the agenda, which is consent agenda. Board. Motion made and seconded to approve consent agenda items A through C. Is there any discussion on that motion to approve? No discussion. We'll do a roll call vote, please.
Trustee Myers,
Aye.
trustee Rick Miller,
Aye.
trustee Baum, trustee Hudson. Absent. Excuse me. Trustee Kaminsky,
That's right, he's on vacation.
trustee Jan Miller,
Aye.
trustee Neidreiter,
Aye.
trustee Pieper. Aye. President Walter.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Can we go back to roll call and make a note that trustee Hudson is absent but excused?
Yes,
All right, thank you.
thank you.
Takes care of consent agenda. Then we can go to new business. Start with new business item A, homeowners association amendment for Lone Oaks subdivision. Give us some more information on that is the village attorney.
So you'll recall a couple meetings ago, we had a similar one of these for a different subdivision. Effectively, the subdivision is looking to make some changes to the restrictions that govern how they deal with themselves. We have looked at it. It's not something that we would typically be involved in or have any concern about. And so the recommendation would be to approve the amendment. With the understanding that obviously this doesn't dictate what our zoning code says. So if there's an inconsistency, our zoning code trumps whatever would be there.
Okay. Anybody have any questions?
Motion to approve homeowners association amendment for Lone Oak subdivision.
We have a motion made. Do I hear a second? Motion made and seconded. Trustee Myers, do you have a question?
Really have to press that button really hard. Brian, what was the area that actually was changed or updated, please?
Sure. Effectively, what the change does is that their restrictions previously did not allow for outbuildings within the subdivision, and they are changing that to allow for outbuildings.
Thank you.
Okay. Further discussion? No further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Next item under new business is item B, Kiwanis of Germantown picnic license, temporary Class B fermented malt beverage and wine license for Taste of Germantown on July 22nd, 2021 at Fireman's Park from approximately 5 p.m. to 9 p.m.
Motion to approve new business.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to approve? No discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None opposed? Motion carries. Next item under new business is item C, Kiwanis of Germantown Picnic License, temporary Class B fermented malt beverage and wine license for Independence Day for July 4th, 2021 at Fireman's Park from approximately 4 p.m. to 10 p.m.
Move approval.
Approve new business C.
Motion to approve. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? No discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Next item is item D, Kiwanis of Germantown Fireworks User Permit, July 4th Fireman's Park, Lynn Gergich, Operator, Wolverine Fireworks Display.
Motion to approve item D.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? No discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Next item under new business is item E, conditional use permit amendment D for Lynn Luckow Red Line Canine Training Center and Behavioral Consultation LLC, agent for Ozaki Development Group, property owner located at West 188 North 11786, Maple Road, Suites 1 through 5. Amendment to CUP 05-2020 to add therapeutic and recreational canine aqua therapy services. Give us more information and background on this. We'll turn the meeting over to our Associate Planner, Emily Zant.
Thank you. The applicant, the owner of Redline Canine Training Center, is proposing an amendment to the existing CUP for the dog training and education facility located on Maple Road in the Germantown Industrial Park. The site is zoned M1 Limited Industrial and is surrounded by the same zoning. The proposal is to expand the use into Suite 5 of the multi-tenant building. This use currently occupies Suites 1 through 4. The use would be expanding into Suite 5 for the addition of a canine pool to be used for aqua therapy and dock diving practice. A small amount of the retail space, small amount of the space would also include retail space. There'll be no structural changes proposed at this time. So the saltwater canine pool has a steel support structure with a vinyl liner. The pool is cleaned by an automatic pool cleaner and filtration system, which runs hourly. A UV light will be added in the near future as the market allows. The floor of Suite 5 is pitched to the east toward the drain and the dock in the event of a leak or liner failure. The applicant is currently working with the wastewater superintendent to verify that the floor drains are connected to the sanitary sewer rather than the storm sewer in the event of a liner failure. So they're working together on that. It was the Plan Commission's recommendation to approve the conditional use permit amendment for the operation of a dog training and education facility in the existing building located on Maple Road to include Space 5 and to add a canine pool and a retail area to the list of services available, subject to all of the conditions of the existing conditional use permit 05-20 and the addition of 2 conditions. The applicant is with us via WebEx if you have any questions for her.
Board?
Motion to approve new business FE, excuse me.
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. No discussion? Look out, do you have any?
Nobody
any
wants
questions?
to talk to me? I'm
I
kidding.
know, I guess everything is
Take a
pretty
breath, Mike.
self-explanatory and your record stands for itself.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. No further discussion? Then all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank
Great.
you.
Have a good night.
You too. Thank you.
Welcome. Next item under new business is new business item F, MacArthur Partners LLC, a subsidiary owned by Ergens Partners LLC, property owner and agents for TCI Transcoil International, located at West 132 North 10611 Grant Drive, 2-lot certified survey map. More information and background on this new business item. Again, we'll turn our meeting over to our associate planner, Emily Zant.
Thank you. The proposed CSM for Ergens Partners, MacArthur Partners, TCI Transcoil is a 2-lot certified survey map to accommodate a 33,000 square foot addition onto the existing building located on Grant Drive. This site location the site is zoned M1 limited industrial and surrounded by the same zoning. This is really just simply moving the line between lots 2 and 3 of CSM 6520 10 feet to the west, just to allow for the new building addition to meet the 25-foot setback as listed on the CSM. And so it was the Plan Commission's recommendation to approve the proposed 2-lot certified survey map to modify the boundary between lots 2 and 3 of CSM 6520 at W132 and 11061 Grant Drive, subject to one condition.
Board?
Motion to approve new business F.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to approve? No discussion? And all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Next item under new business is item G, MSI General Corp., agent for DJN Family Limited Partnership, property owner of Enercon Industries, located at North 120 West 19349 Freistadt Road, 2-lot certified survey map for CSM. More background information on this, we'll turn the meeting over to our Community Development Director, Jeff Retzoff.
Thank you, Mr. President. Like the last CSM, this CSM is for the purpose of relocating a common property line between the two properties on McCormick Drive in our Germantown Industrial Park. Enercon Industries owns the operates from the north parcel, Lot 1 on the CSM, and MGS Automation from the Lot 2 on the south. The common property line runs east and west and would be relocated approximately 150 feet to the south to shift about 1.8 acres from MGS parcel to the Enercon parcel to the north to accommodate a planned 55,000 square foot facility expansion. Enercon Industries is going to expand their facility and relocate their corporate office facility to Germantown. That'll be coming forward on Plan Commission agenda later this year. Plan Commission recommendation was to approve the CSM with one condition, that addressing technical corrections is in process and being completed right now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Board?
Motion to approve new business G.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to approve? No discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Next item under new business is item H, American Rescue Plan Act, Local Recovery Funds. So this is for informational only. We have with us our, right?
Budget manager.
All right, we'll get your name as we see you more.
No problem. I had asked the administrator to put this on the agenda tonight just to give you guys an update. Earlier last week, our wonderful village clerk treasurer filed to the state to receive our ARPA funds. We are scheduled to receive $2.1 million over the next 2 years, half coming this year, half coming next year. We're hoping to get the first half this Friday. The state plans on releasing those funds this Friday. That's their goal. I'm not sure if they'll meet it or not. So we're scheduled to get just over 1 million this Friday and then $1 million a year from Friday. questions or not.
Questions? Mr. Nyrider?
One question for you. What is the intent of those funds, or are they limited to certain things or general use or what?
Yeah, there are some limits that the federal government put on them. As for our intent, I would defer to the village administrator to answer that question. They're scheduled for revenue recoveries that for lost revenues due to COVID, broadband infrastructure, water and sewer utility infrastructure. I think those are the main three categories.
I think the one thing I would add is if there are projects or purposes of things the village could do to assist businesses or residents who were economically disadvantaged because of COVID, that fit in there as well.
Trustee Kaminsky?
I have a question as well. About a month ago, I think it was one of our, maybe 2 board meetings ago, we were talking about Washington County getting this basic funding from the federal government to also disperse. Does that have anything to do with this, or is that a separate program?
It's the same program, a separate pot of money. When the federal government set this program up, they divided and created separate pools for municipalities and counties. Washington County is receiving funds. I think there's significantly more than what we're receiving. Other than that, all that I really know is what I've read in the paper. I believe they are setting up a process to begin planning for the use of the funds that they've received.
And that will remain with the county. They will not be dispersing those funds to other entities?
They could choose, the ARPA rules do allow governments to, in essence, share the money that they receive. So if there are joint projects, or if one unit of government wants to give the money that they receive to another unit of government for ARPA eligible purposes, they could do that. So if the county would choose to give that money to other governments, they would have that option.
Is that also called the American Rescue Act as well then?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Washington County received 26 million total. They probably received half of that already.
Any other questions? Yes.
What fund does that sit in when we receive it?
There should be a line item in Fund 10 for federal grant revenue. I don't have the specific line item in front of me, but
It'll be its own line item.
yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Trustee Myers?
Steve, is it possible you could make up a list of items that could be utilized in this area that we could look at, and maybe what your initial thoughts are?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. We'll come back. I'll plan to do that at the July meeting, and talk a little bit further about potential uses of the funds. The biggest thing that I will emphasize, I'll mention it now, and I'll keep talking about this until we've decided what to use with the funds, is I would encourage the village board to look at these as one-time revenues and use them for one-time expenses. That is something that organizations like the Government Finance Officers Association and others are trying to get out there, that what we should try to avoid doing is using the funds for ongoing operations, because this is only a one-time grant. We'll get half this year and half next year, but I've never seen anything like this in my 30 years in local government, and I'm guessing we'll never see anything like this again. So
It comes with no strings.
relatively few strings for programs like this. So again, pretty unusual circumstances.
Does it have a sunset date?
Yeah, the
24.
funds have to be expended by December 31st, 2024. Yeah, the total has to be spent by 2024.
Any other questions? No other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next item under new business is our license renewals.
Motion to approve new business LI 1 through 24 this went through public safety, and we did ask the police and fire, was there any problems with any of these? And the answer was no.
Okay, so our first motion is to approve
1 through 24I.
under I. Okay? Any discussion on that motion to approve?
Could I just read this portion?
Absolutely.
I would just like to read a portion of the agenda for items I through P. All premise license recommendations approvals to be conditional upon the completion of all documentation, compliance of all code violations, requirements, and monies owed to the village paid prior to issuance of the licenses in addition to any other conditions noted. All of the businesses have done an excellent job with their paperwork, but just wanted to add that. Thank you.
And this is for the renewal of their Class B fermented malt beverage and intoxicating liquor license for the period commencing July 1st, 2021 and ending in July 30th of 2022. Any further discussion on the motion to approve? No further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Are any opposed? None opposed. Next motion would be for item J. The following have applied to the village board for the village of Germantown, Washington County, a new Class B fermented malt beverage and intoxicating liquor license for the period commencing from July 1st to June 30th, 2022. That would be under item J.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve item J. Any discussion on that motion? No discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Next item is item K. The following have applied to the village board for the village of Germantown, Washington County for the renewal of the Class C wine license for the period commencing July 1st, 2021 and ending June 30th, 2022.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to approve new business item K? No discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Next item, new business item L. The following have applied to the village board of the village of Germantown for the renewal of Class B fermented malt beverage and Class C wine licenses.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve new business item L. Businesses listed 1 through 4. Any discussion on that motion to approve? No discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Next item is item M. The following have applied to the village board for the new Class B fermented malt beverage license and Class C wine license for the period from July 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2022.
Motion to approve new business item M.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve new business item M for the Cracker Barrel. Any discussion on that motion to approve? No discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Next item is item N. The following have applied to the village board for the renewal of the Class B winery license and Class B fermented malt beverage license.
Motion to approve new item N under new business.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion on that motion to approve for the approval of the Appleworks Winery for Class B and Class B fermented malt beverage? No discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Next item is new business item O. The following have applied to the village board of the village of Germantown for the renewal of the Class A fermented malt beverage, including cider and intoxicating liquor license.
Motion to approve new business O 1 through 9.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve new business item O for all businesses listed 1 through 9. Any discussion on that motion to approve? No discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None opposed? Motion carries. Next item under new business is item P. The following have applied to the village Board of the Village of Germantown for the renewal of their Class A fermented malt beverage, including cider license.
Motion to approve new item P, numbers 1 and 2.
Motion made and seconded to approve new business item P for both businesses that are listed. Any discussion on that motion to approve? No discussion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. That then takes us to new business item Q, Resolution 18-2021, authorizing municipal and direct charges for public fire protection. Give us more information and background on this new business item. Are we turning it over to the village administrator or the chief of the fire department?
Actually, we have a presentation that the fire chief is going to start out with, and then the budget manager has some additional information in it as well. So I just need to pull it up on the screen. They're entrusting me with the technology piece of this.
Good thing Brian's sitting next to you.
Yeah.
All right. First of all, thank you for allowing me to speak on this. I know the fire department has received a lot of attention over the last few years. Just wanted to kind of highlight some of the history of where the fire department was as far as our staffing and budgets, where we are headed, and kind of the conditions that we are dealing with right now, and what some of our needs may be in the future. So we're going to go through the staffing from 1990 to 2016, staffing since 2016, our budget progression up to the other bigger departments within the village, what our needs are, and what we're looking at for the future. So from 1990 to 2000, the fire department had 2 part-time firefighters in the station from 7 a.m. till 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. We had 60 paid-on-call firefighter EMTs that handled the night and weekends, a full-time fire chief. In that period of time, we averaged about 474 calls for service. We did 1,066 fire inspections on average. Between 2000 and 2016, we added 3 full-time firefighters Monday through Friday between 7 and 5, in addition to the 2 part-time firefighters that we had Monday through Friday between 7 and 5. Our paid-on-call staff had dwindled to about 33. We did have a full-time fire chief. Our calls for service had increased to 1,155, and our fire inspections had increased to 1,818. Between 2016 is when we started to make some of the changes that we currently have. We had 2 full-time firefighters Monday through Friday, 2 full-time firefighters on a 24-hour shift as well. Our paid-on-call had fallen further to 25. We had a full-time fire chief, a full-time deputy chief. Our calls had increased to 1,735. Fire inspections had increased 166. And then 2019 and current is when we had the majority of our changes. We increased to 4 full-time firefighters, 4 full-time firefighter paramedics per 24-hour shift, 1 battalion chief per 24-hour shift, a full-time fire chief. We're down to approximately 7 paid on call. We respond to about 2,108 calls for service, and our inspections have increased to 3,640. So what does that mean? You look at the graph on the left, that is the direction of all of our calls and all of our inspections. The next graph is our POC staffing. As you can see, it's heading down. And our station staffing, it's flatlined. So although we have had significant increase in full-time firefighters, our staffing level at the station has not changed. It's just stabilized us for the decrease of the paid on-call staffing that we have had. It's also given us a little bit better response at night. But the number of total, especially during the day, is exactly the same as it has been since 2000. Here's our budgets. Fire department's the first column, police department's the second column, highway department's the third column. In the fire department budget line, you can see what the number is, but that number includes that $537,430. So really, you subtract out that number, and that's really what we're operating with. Pretty low comparatively. So with the staffing that we have now, this is kind of an outlay of how we typically respond to calls. The staffing gives us 2 ambulance available 24 hours a day, or 1 ambulance, 2 people on a fire engine, and a battalion chief 24 hours a day. If you think a little bit further through that, there are some state laws that require for fire departments to have, for every 2 people they send into a burning building, they have to have 2 people on the outside. So if we pull up to a fire that has someone who was injured in that fire, that takes 2 people away right away. And then you go to the fire engine, there's 2 people there, but one of those people has to be able to operate the fire pump. So that leaves 1 person to attack the fire from the outside and 1 battalion chief to direct incoming units about what's going on. So it's not necessarily enough to even get into that fire that's burning. It also can be kind of tricky if there's someone stuck inside that fire. Basically what we're doing is we're kind of leaving the person who's driving the fire engine outside to kind of direct the incoming crews while the rest of the crews go in and try to search or attend to the patient that we're dealing with. What would 1 more person per shift do? 1 more person per shift would give us the ability to have 3 ambulances 24 hours a day, or 3 people on a fire truck, 1 battalion chief, and an ambulance available, which would allow us to more easily meet our 2 in and 2 out needs. In addition to that, we have been receiving a lot of double, triple, and quadruple calls. I would say probably since the start of the pandemic, but really within the last 6 months. Last month, we had 26 instances of where we had between 2 and 3 calls going on at the same time. As President Walter had talked about at the Big Boy event the other day, that day in particular, just at that event, we had 4 incidents, mostly from heat. 2 of our ambulances were going back and forth to the hospital while we have Menominee Falls coming in for another call until another one cleared. We also had a Richfield unit coming in. Plus we had another call on the outside of Big Boys at the same time. That day alone, we ended up with 14 calls. So our number of calls are greatly going up. As of today, as a department, we have already responded to 1,019 calls this year. Next one. Planning for our future. As some of you are aware, a few years ago we closed one of our fire stations to try and consolidate it so it was easier to assemble our people to have them respond to a call. Prior to downgrading to 1 fire station, we had 2 people assigned to 1 station between 7 and 5, and 3 people assigned to the other station also between 7 and 5, with the exception of the year 2016, there was 2 there 24 hours a day. But if you look at the station itself, our station has 6 bunk rooms. We currently have 5 people there 24 hours a day. It has 8 bays in it. In those 8 bays, we have 2 engines, 1 ladder truck, 2 primary ambulances, a backup ambulance, a battalion chief car, and a water tender. That's all of those bays full, and that's even after we liquidated some of our assets that we had when we closed one of the stations. Future needs. I know everybody's talking about public works and police and everything, and in those considerations, I'd like to put in my 2 cents that if you were going to look at another piece of property and you were inclined to add a second fire station, with the addition of 1 more person per shift, that would allow us to more easily split up people, to have 2 people at 1 fire station and 4 at the other. 1 would be an ambulance, 1 would be an ambulance and an engine. An ideal location from our point of view would be in the neighborhood of Donjas Bay and Fond du Lac. And you can see behind the little fire guys there is our heat map from where our calls are. So that's the locations where we get the majority of our calls. The guy on the left is our current fire station, and the person on the right would be, if I were to pick a new location, would be in that area.
So building off that discussion, the public fire protection is currently paid through the property tax levy, all 537,000 of it. That will increase with the new utility rate to about 600,000, and then again 1 year later to 683,000. What staff is recommending is that we shift some of the cost of the public fire protection onto the water utility to free up that levy space to do other things with the fire department operationally or whatever the village chooses to do with that. We lay out 3 different options. 75% could be on the water utility and 25% stay on the tax levy. You do a 50-50 split, or you can do 75% tax levy and 25% on the water utility. Those numbers are broken down in front of you, depending on which option you choose, if any. The next slide shows the impact on a $350,000 home, depending on the different proposed charges. How that would look, savings on the tax levy or increases on the water bill. So I guess as staff are looking for guidance or proposing these certain changes and to free up that levy space, if you so choose to do so.
I guess to kind of tie this together, we were before the board a month ago and walked through this as an option. There is an application that's open before the Public Service Commission right now as part of the overall water rate increase. One of the questions that was asked of me during the last presentation was whether or not the board could defer that decision. And the answer to that is yes, but we would have to reapply to the PSC and go through another application for a public fire protection fee at some point in the future. So this is an option. There's a window to make a change along these lines that's open to the village board now. We do need to inform the PSC. There's not a strict deadline for us, but we do need to inform the PSC of a decision of what, if any, changes the village would like to make in order for them to continue to process the overall rate increase application. So as suggested by the board at the last discussion on this, we have presented these 3 options. There is a resolution in the packet that was prepared by the village attorney, which the village board could use tonight if you would like to move forward with one of these 3 options, or if there are other variations of this that you would like to look at. And I guess to conclude with my thoughts, the village board has been very dedicated. Certainly seeing the fire chief's presentation going back further in history, but definitely the past 4 years since I've been here, I've seen a great deal of dedication from the village board fund emergency response services, to make sure that when somebody calls with a medical emergency, there's a paramedic responding and not only an EMT, to make sure that we're staffing as best we can to handle the increase in the number of calls that are taking place. But I would also say that it's also clear that the increase in the growth in the number of calls is not stopping or slowing down. It seems to be continuing to go up. I think from what I've read in the literature, a lot of it is the aging of the population. I mean, present company accepted, of course, but the aging of the population, as well as the growth in Germantown, is driving the increased call volume, and that's going to be a challenge for us. From a financial perspective, I try to stay away from politically charged issues, and I'm trying to stay away from that here as well. But it's simply the matter of mathematics is that the levy limits constrain the village's ability to add resources to meet those challenges. And one of the few tools that the village board that you have in your toolbox is the PFP. And if you do choose, you can use that as a source of revenue to fund both some of the past investments in fire services, as well as provide a funding source for some of the future needs for the fire department. And it's a difficult decision for the board, but it's one that I think is very important for the community. So I think with that, you have the fire chief, the budget manager, and I are here to answer any questions you might have.
Mr. Myers.
Steve, two questions. One would be, we just went through the PSC in regard to the rate and what we're going to end up doing. Wouldn't this add also on to those people?
Yes, and that's a very good question. It is, and I think it's one of the things that makes this a very challenging issue for the village board, is that putting these costs onto the water bill would be on top of a water rate increase that is going through the PSC. So the answer to that question is yes.
And we haven't determined yet, this board has not determined yet in regard to how we want to actually go forward in this area also. Gave us a couple of options, if I remember right.
Right. The PSC. So from a process perspective, the PSC is looking for a decision from the village board on the PFP before they process the entire rate application packet. So after they're looking for the village board to make this decision first before they make their final decision on the overall rate increase.
My second question is, this changes the amount of money where we have for the fire department, but it does not give additional employees that I think John was talking about, one for each particular shift. Is that correct?
This action alone would not impact the staffing levels at the fire department. I would say that what this action would do is give the village board the financial flexibility to address that in the next budget, if that's the choice that the village board made.
Thank you.
Trustee Rick Miller.
A couple questions. So you're saying that the PFP, we can transfer this, or some or all, or, a percentage, and that doesn't change the levy? I mean, the levy can remain the same?
Unlike other types of fees, and the village attorney may want to weigh on this, but unlike other types of fees, this particular fee does not come with the requirement that we reduce the levy by a corresponding amount. So the village board could keep the levy where it is and transfer some or all of that cost that's currently paid on the levy to a direct utility bill.
Interesting. Second question I had is since our calls are increasing so much, we have to have an increase in revenue as well. Probably not the same amount, but what is that looking like?
Not very good.
Great.
With COVID last year, which would have been our first full year with our fully implemented paramedic service, the state stopped collecting. So we don't know exactly what our revenues look like.
To expand on that, when we go out for a call and per the village board policy, we do bill for those calls and those bills go out. So we are collecting when individuals are paying those bills, when they have insurance coverage. But a significant amount of what we bill ends up going to the State Department of Revenue as part of the statewide collections program.
Yep.
And they suspended that last year and it remains suspended due to COVID. At some point, I would imagine they'll pick that back up. But as John mentioned, it's very difficult to really get a good handle on what we're producing in revenue without that collection.
So some of that'll come back,
Some
but
of
it's not offsetting the increase in the amount of calls that you're making.
Correct. Some of that will come back in that ARPA funding that you guys were looking at earlier. And that's one of those things that qualifies for that. So we do have some options out there. But as of right now, it's still been halted.
Thank you.
So what they're not paying is the Medicare portion? Or they're not paying or going back to collect overdue bills?
Anything that goes to collections would be taken up by the State Department of Revenue. And that's not what they're going after.
So they're just gonna leave it for us to make up somehow?
That I don't have an answer to at this point in time yet.
I would guess that, and the state has not suspended this program before. We won't write this off. We will continue to give it to the state to collect when they go back and they do start the collections program. The problem is the longer you wait from the point of service to collect, typically the lower the percentage that we end up collecting. So I think we will get back on track for the future, but we will probably have some level of lost revenue that we won't recover.
And I can't let this go yet. And the reason provided of why they couldn't collect anymore is not because they laid off anybody. I mean,
No, it was just due to COVID. That's what.
Free shots and everything. It's free.
thanks. Trustee Kaminsky.
Maybe that's what the American Rescue Plan Act is for. They kind
It's
of
all the same
planned it
money.
this way, so I think it's a possibility. I just want to be sure I'm understanding correctly. We had a discussion about this previously when we talked about the water bill increase and the potential for that. I guess they're asking us to kind of go out on a limb and not know what these utility bills are going to cost if we decide to go 50%. I think we need to do something. I don't think it's 75%. I think it's going to be 50 or 25. But when I look at these numbers, if I'm seeing this correctly, that $537,000 within a year will go up to 600. Is that correct? And then the following year, 684, correct? So that's within 2 years, we're going to have to somehow cover off on that difference. And either it comes out of our general fund, we're all going to be paying for it with taxes, or we take part of that and present it to our utility payers who get the fire hydrant in their front yard, for example, but I don't have out where I live. I think that's reasonable, but I think we don't want to totally shock our utility customers here. I think the increase we're discussing right now is pretty significant. So I personally couldn't say tonight what I would want. I know it's going to be 50% or 25%. Certainly would never be 75 or 100, I don't think, for me. But moving forward, we have to do this. And I also think moving forward, we do need to look at the staffing in the fire department. Absolutely. I mean, you look at the construction in Germantown, there is where we need to spend our money. And if that means, hey, maybe wait another year, for reassessing our homes, I'm fine with that because I think this is extremely important. And this is going to be that reoccurring expense that we can't use any American Preservation Act money for, because we have to make sure this money is in the budget year after year after year after year. But we must, I think it's a priority for me, we must not just maintain, but grow the fire department staff, and that's starting in this next budget year.
If I could add one piece of information for the board, just to give some context about the water rate increase itself. So the PSC has informed us that they're looking at about a 49% increase. That applies, so if you're thinking about the water bill that you get at home, that only applies to the line on the water bill that is for water usage. It does not apply to, there's a sewer line on there, there's some other items, so it only applies to that one line. We did a quick analysis of residential water bills. The typical water usage bill for the typical resident in Germantown falls between $30 and $60 per month. So if you look at a roughly 50% increase, that's going to add about $15 to $30 per month on that overall water bill. And then as you see here, if we went with the 75%, that would add at $62 per year, $15 per quarter. The 50% would add about $10 per quarter, and the 25% would add about $5 per quarter.
Trustee Baum?
I believe we also talked about last time that you're going to look at business bills. Got any numbers on that?
For the water bill itself, no. We haven't gone back and pulled the data on the largest businesses to look at that particular impact. That is something that we can continue to work on and will before the water rate increases is adopted. I think the suggestion from the board is that you'd like to see that publicly. I also think it would be a good idea to contact those businesses directly. I'd probably want to do that before presenting it on cable and the internet, just so that they're given a heads up before they see it or read it. But it is something we haven't pulled that data together yet, but it is something that I do know the board asked for, and we will get that together.
And then I would like to see this information and that information all at the same time, because we talked about some big numbers last time. I forget what they were, but I was astonished by them. These are much smaller numbers. Whereas when you have all the numbers together, then I feel I can analyze it all and make a decision. This is not for action tonight, it's just for information, correct?
No, there's a resolution.
And I would say the village board certainly, and we want to make sure as staff we give you all the information that you want. And there is a window to delay this until the July meeting if there is more information you'd like, and we will take that down and come back to that in July if that's what the board would like. I would recommend that we try to get in place everything that's needed in July for a decision going forward, so we can keep moving through the PSC process.
I would like to, I'm not going to make the motion right now, but I'd like to table it till our next meeting and get that information in here, and let's pull it all together at once and let's make a final decision.
You're not making a motion yet?
Not yet.
Okay. Trustee Myers?
I agree with Terry and Dave. I really have all the information at one time. I know, Steve, as you mentioned, the PSC wants a decision. They're not going to give it the rate until they have it at the end. The other question is, Matthew talked about $2.1 million that we're going to get, but only $1 million maybe this week is such. But the governor's getting a lot of money. Is this something that the lobbyists or somebody else could actually direct them to actually take care of some of this money that these local governors have had to put up with, not collected from?
Well, again, and this is a very political issue, and there are different viewpoints with different parties involved. I think that just, again, from looking at it from a mathematical perspective, the League of Municipalities in particular pushed for shared revenue, which has not increased in, I don't know how long, 10 years or more. But if anyone was going to lobby the state for resources to try to address these issues, I think that the best vehicle for that would be state shared revenue.
On a separate course?
What's it done?
Yeah, I think I would caution against using the money that's come through the federal government, because that's one-time money. Now, on the other hand, the state is experiencing a $4.4 billion surplus, and those are ongoing revenues. And if the state decided that they chose to, use that, direct some of that money back to municipalities for services like fire protection, that would assist with what we're trying to accomplish here. That is not what came out of Joint Finance Committee in their recent decision-making process.
There again, that money is in the control of the governor only. He can direct that one way or another, that I'm aware of, per se.
Well, I think you and I are talking about two separate items. I think you're addressing the ARPA money that went to the state, and that is under the control of the governor. What I was addressing was state shared revenue, which is part of the annual state budget, and or biannual state budget, and that's under the control of, right now, it's in the legislature, going through joint finance, and then it'll eventually go to the governor for approval or veto.
So I understand what you were saying, that was separate. I was trying to address that $4.4 billion that is under his control, that he could end up doing something. I think the league should actually go in that particular area rather than levy, because I don't see, I will make that other statement. I would like to see them do something in regard to that.
Not to belabor, but the 4.4 billion, just to be clear, is not that I used. That number was not the ARPA money that going to the state. That's the state surplus revenues. So when they adopted the last biennial budget, actual revenues from income taxes, sales taxes, et cetera, were $4.4 billion higher than what they had estimated in the budget. And that is what the state legislature and the governor are working through now. And the discussion is how much of that goes back in terms of income tax reductions, how much of it is used for schools, how much of it, if any, comes back to municipalities. So that's part of that. That's part of that budget discussion.
And you're right in regard to the money that came from the other act. I think it was $2.5 billion.
I'd have to, that one I'm not sure off the top of my head. That sounds about right, but I don't know.
That the state's going, the majority of the money that the state's going to get is going to go to Madison and Milwaukee. And that's pretty much how they're going to split it up. And Germantown will probably be way down on the list just based on our demographic and what our yearly annual income per household is in regards to the other cities that are much less. And then after Milwaukee and Madison, then they probably break it into Racine, then they probably break it into, Kenosha, and then from there, whatever is left. Right. And that goes quickly at that point.
Actually, the village attorney just looked up the state ARPA fund was 3.2 billion.
Okay. Thank you, Brian.
And it's really at the governor's discretion. He can do whatever he wants. It doesn't even go through legislation. Trustee Chan Miller.
I would just like to agree with Terry and Dave and Dennis. I think we need all the information for us so that we can make the decision. Just the public, it's also industry in Germantown that are water users, that are fire users, public safety is number one in my book. We've got to make sure that our fire and police department have the right resources to cover the needs of the accelerated incidents of fire and police reports. So we appreciate all your service. Thank you.
Chance, my turn, and then I'll come back to you. I have a couple questions. During your presentation, and I appreciate all the information, but we're seeing a huge jump in increase in inspections. Is it because you've increased your schedule of inspections, or is it because there's more places to inspect?
It's because of there's more places to inspect is number one, and two, we're having an increase in violations. So we are having more instances of re-inspections. The state determines how often we inspect businesses, and that's twice a year. But if they have something major wrong, then we have to go back and recheck again. Historically, we haven't done too bad. Seems as of late, though, we've been finding more and more.
Was it the original schedule, like once every 2 years you get through all your inspections that you needed to do?
No, it's twice a year.
Okay. And then
There's
the
some other
additional is
ones-
because of the refollow-up is what you're saying?
There's that. We also have more sprinkler systems in the village now. Those require separate inspections. When we're installing sprinkler systems, those are hydro tested and pump tested. So there's quite a few other tests that go along with it now.
Okay. And also during your presentation, you had said when we had added the additional 24-hour people at the buildings, we got a little better response time. Didn't we get a way better response time?
We did get a way better response time. That is
Because-
correct. In fact, we were above 5 minutes and 20 seconds more than 92% of the time. That number has come down since we've been getting so many double or triple calls, because we find ourselves now either clearing the hospital, taking longer to get here, or waiting for mutual aid to come into the village. So that number, I believe at the last public safety meeting, was 8% of the time. But yeah, yes, it was significantly better.
Okay. And then,
And I didn't mean to misskew those numbers if I did.
no, it's fine. And then looking out long-term, and I appreciate that you have a vision for the future, with the calls that you're seeing increase. You know, the reason to consolidate was faster reaction time to the calls, and now you're suggesting to split for the same reason. Where does it become the breaking point where one makes more sense for the other? Because it first of all made sense to consolidate. At what point in the future does it make sense to now split back up?
It does not make sense right now as we are staffed right now.
Okay.
But if we were to add staffing, be it one person or whatever, at that point in time, it would be more feasible and it would be more beneficial, because there would be enough people then to actually have a firefighting force or an ambulance crew that is more, I don't know, I'll say cohesive. When you have 3 people at one building and 2 people at the other building, a lot of times you found yourself with just one person sitting in a station not doing anything, or not necessarily not doing anything.
Careful.
But this exact scenario came up with the consultant. We had 2 ambulances out, and I, at that point in time, was the one left sitting in the station. And his exact question to me was, well, what happens now? He's like, you can't do anything by yourself. I'm like, well, I first respond, or I call mutual aid, or just assess what's going on and see what's needed. That extra person would at least have it so if there's 4 people at one station, that's still enough for 2 ambulances or 1 full fire engine, or depending on how you mix it up, it just makes it so that you can have an adequate firefighting force at one place. You then divide off 2 or even 3 and 3 and have an engine and a ladder go or ambulance closer to one side of town than all the way across town. It provides a lot more flexibility.
Okay.
With the way it was before, with just having a couple people here and a couple people there, and then waiting for paid on call at one station ultimately what we found ourselves doing is just driving past one station to go to a call compared to the other station because of where the makeup of the people were. But as we sit today with our staffing today, no, it does not make sense to do it now.
Okay, and mostly, the emergency calls are still ambulance or paramedic calls. What, have we seen an increase in the number of fires per year, fire calls or fire response?
The fire responses are going up, but they are still making up the same proportion of our calls. They are about 10%, 10 to 12% of our calls are fire calls.
And you don't see any reduction based on additional sprinkler systems that have been installed within?
No, and quite truthfully, sprinkler systems probably increase our calls. Because sprinkler systems malfunction, sprinkler systems freeze, fork truck drivers hit sprinklers. They just break. So I would say legitimately sprinkler systems do increase our calls.
Okay. A question for Steve. So when we're looking at our yearly budgets for all the different departments and we look at the fire department's budget, we have our set for cost, equipment, staffing, so on and so forth. And then we know that we're going to be taking roughly $500,000 plus out of there for that water utility. Isn't that already figured in to project it or to present it as a loss in their budget? Is that really a fair statement?
I guess I wouldn't use the word loss. But I think too, if what you're looking for is an accurate representation of the resources the fire department has to respond to calls, I would take that $537,000 out because that is a payment to the water utility for all the infrastructure in place. So when the fire truck goes out, that there's a hydrant to connect to. So if you're like, if we were doing an analysis and say we're comparing the Germantown Fire Department's budget to Menominee Falls and Cedarburg and Hartford, I'm not sure, but my guess would be that most or all of, or none of those communities put this money in the fire department budget. And so you'd kind of be comparing apples to oranges. So
if we would look at those communities as a surrounding and what they're doing in order to fund that portion, can we see some of those as information as well, surrounding communities? But at the same time, we have to kind of compare that as to what they have of urban versus rural, because we're very distinct in that way of Germantown being, to the south, very urban, and into the north, very rural. So, we have all our residents between both borders, but, we have that dichotomy between, that like a Menominee Falls or maybe even like a West Dallas one have. Okay, the last question I have is,
Mr. President, I also, I looked at some of the surrounding communities and I can't find my spreadsheet right now, but about half had them on the tax levy and half had them on the water utility. I can get more detail for you.
All right, great, thank you. And then last time we had talked about this, we had talked about the possibility of keeping it where it's at for the levy, and any increase would then go to the water utility. What percentage does that come into in regards to the chart we have here?
that would be, I believe, approximately the 25%.
Yeah, it's about the 25%.
So if we kept on the levy as it stands today and put the increase of, call it $100,000 for the next year, that falls into about the 25% range?
Yeah, it's probably a little smaller.
Okay.
Yeah.
From what I'm hearing and the information that I have, I'm not ready to make a decision tonight, but at the same time, I think that delay also allows this information to disperse out. And that is more important to me, that the residents hear what we're talking about and start to get an understanding of it. And then give them the opportunity for input, whether it's directly to us or at the meeting coming to us. But I think it's important that they understand it in regards to where the money is currently, where it needs to go to, and where we're looking to put it, so that as you have each of the different representative of the residents, whether they're in the urban side, and they could fairly say, well, you're putting the cost of that on the water utility, so I'm paying for it twice, kind of. Or you could look at it and say, well, if you don't have water out, you're still getting the ability for the fire department to come out to you and service an emergency call or, a fire, if you have it out there and they're taking it from the hydrants, they're not getting it from a pond or anything out there. So you're getting the benefit of it because you're not having to pay for it through the water utility. So I'm really paying for your service. So I think we need to hear those arguments and see what the residents think, because if you're going to put this on top of what we're already looking at as an increase of 50+% for the water, that could be 100% increase for some people. And granted, it's not hundreds of dollars, but when people are running their budgets nowadays, they're a little bit tighter than most, and it still has an impact. So I think it's important that we get the information in front of us, but at the same time, put the information out there so that we can hear that feedback and it doesn't come after the fact, because that's when people get angry. And that's what people are going to come at you. And you're not going to have that positive feedback back and forth. You're just going to have a bunch of angry people here yelling at you for making a decision without them included. Trustee, I was going to go to Trustee Baum and then I'll go to Trustee Rick Miller. Oh, okay. Trustee Rick Miller then.
Yeah, you're gonna.
I would just make one other recommendation, and that is that if I was looking at these numbers, I would think, number one, if my bill's going up 49%, I'm not thinking my water bill, I'm thinking my bill is going up 49%. We have to show them what the increase is going to be. A dollar amount increase on one bill, a quarter. I think that's important. So in this aspect too, I mean, if we're looking at the first year, it would be around $10.50 per water bill. And it's just natural that you're going to think that your entire bill is going up like that. So I think we have to, be real specific and show everybody that this is the impact on your bill. So, okay, that's what I was going to say.
Trustee Baum.
Couple of things before I make my motion. Is there an alternative revenue source that I'm seeing here? If I have to come back and do re-inspections, can't I charge for that? I get charged in my business when I have to resubmit a set of plans. I get charged for that because I didn't do my job thoroughly the first time.
So we do get money from the state of Wisconsin for performing fire inspections. And that is what pays for us to do those inspections. There are some departments that do charge for fire inspections, but then they lose that state aid. So.
But what about the re-inspection because you didn't do it correctly?
I don't know if we have anything on our fee schedule that allows us to do that. Historically, we've never done that. We try to work nice with them and get them into compliance.
Yeah, but look at your numbers. Your numbers are going sky high, and what
They
you
are.
told me is a lot of this is because you're re-inspecting stuff. Well,
That is true.
get it done right the first time and stop and free us up to go rescue people. So that'd be one thought is let's charge for it and then they may
The other thing I would add, it's a great idea and it's something we should take a look at. And we could check as well, but I'm pretty confident that if we did that, that would fall under the levy limit constraint. So if we started that fee, we would have to reduce our levy by a corresponding amount. And that may be something that we would want to do anyways, but it would not result in any additional resources, for the fire department.
Okay, and then is there for the fork truck that pops a sprinkler head, is there I always thought that that was a false alarm and you got charged for a false alarm.
So we do have the ability to charge for false alarms, but it's set up in tiers, and I believe they're allowed 5 free ones per year, and then it goes up correspondingly after that.
But
That's normal.
I can screw up this fire department 5 times a year before I get penalized for it.
Correct.
I think we should look back.
That also applies to like people elderly that have the alert systems.
Condos.
If you bump that alert system, it will go off. And in some cases with the hearing aids on or up, They may hear it or they may not, and that's happened to or when I was taking care of my aunt, that happened. She probably had that first month, four people knocking on her door where they're saying, hey, we got an ambulance call here because your life alert went off.
Can you give us some numbers of how many of those you go through?
I can, yes.
So we can understand that of the 3,800 calls, 3,600 of them are false alarms of some kind.
Yeah, I can do that
Okay,
for sure.
so with that, I'll make a motion to table this until our next meeting, first week of July.
Table, you're making a motion to table?
Postpone.
Okay.
That's terminology.
May the 19th.
Postpone it till July 19th.
Okay.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. Trustee Kaminsky, you had your hand up earlier.
Yeah, but I guess I just one quick comment. I don't want to take us down another path, but I want to really see those numbers for how this is going to look for businesses with these water rate increases before I smack them with another increase for a return on a fire. You know, it seems like we're getting anti-business here. And I would like to also mention, having been a part of some of these where you come through and inspect, you might find one or two little things wrong, which, hey, who knew? And you want to do the right thing as a business, but then you have to come back and make sure that we did that.
And to be sure, there are some things that are very minor that we may just say, hey, your exit sign light bulb is burnt out. Please fix it. And when you have fixed it, take this piece of paper and email it back to us that
Perfect.
says you have fixed it. But it still does go down into our books as a violation.
Yeah. But not as a reinspection.
Correct. And there are also other times where many businesses do fix them right there while we're on the spot. But
Mhm.
more businesses, more equipment.
Mhm.
we
I
have
think
more.
it would be, I agree with Dave. I think it'd be kind of good to take a closer look at the first alert things going off and how many times you have to go back. Like if there are businesses where you are going back like the third time or something, then that's out of control.
Sure, and a lot of the alert alarms, a lot of those are senior living communities, those residents are required to wear them a lot of the time inside those buildings. And we do get quite a few of them there.
The type of people wearing them really are not always cognizant that they've bumped it or anything else.
A lot of times they don't. A lot of times they're animals in their house bump them.
Well, I
They
was,
sit down in a chair and it bounces off the table.
well, and I think, I mean, I was at a store where your people showed up for some woman whose alert went off in the car and she was shopping. She had no clue.
Mhm.
I mean, it's just, I bet there's a lot of those.
In the car. That one's working well.
The one thing that I would just kind of add, and we can take a look and provide some information and some data on that, but the thing to keep in mind is that because of the way the state levy limit is constructed,
Doesn't help you.
it doesn't help. We can do that and we may end up spending more on administration and billing and collections and all of that than we'd have to reduce the levy by an offsetting amount. So we end up where we started.
Yeah, not worth it.
It's good to at least look at it once.
Just curious anyway. That's just curiosity.
All right, further discussion on the motion to postpone. No further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen. Next one is new business item R, the location and design of Public Works Building. The village board may enter into closed session per Wisconsin statutes 19.95 subsection 1 subparagraph E for the purpose of deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, and then may reconvene into open session to take such action as it deems appropriate.
Motion to go into closed session for R and S.
Your motion is for R and S?
Yes.
All right, then
Mr. President, though, there are some items that may be better for open session if you, it depends.
Which letter?
R. For R. Narrator.
To the,
To do
Because we're discussing.
SOR.
Um, Under R, a portion of what I plan to present to the village board under R is related to negotiations or potential negotiations. There is a portion of it that is not, that I think could be discussed in open session. Under S, it is that in its entirety is about negotiations with the school district on the intergovernmental agreement.
And being the, stick in the mud, to the extent that it isn't negotiations, it should not be in closed session
Which one?
on R. So there should be probably just like last meeting where we started in open session and then we'll ultimately end up going into closed session to talk more specifically about the negotiating aspects.
Okay.
How do you want to, how would you handle that in regard to a motion, Brian?
Throw a flag.
I think you could certainly take the motion now and do that and then just start in open session. And then when we're done with the open session portion, then we'll just indicate that we're now done with the open session portion and go into closed session at that point. I think that's fine. Especially since there is a motion on the table.
Right. And since you put R and S together, S reads as intergovernmental agreement with Germantown School District for school resource officers. The village board may enter into closed session per Wisconsin statutes 19.85 subsection 1 subparagraph E for the purpose of deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, and may reconvene into open session to take such action as it deems appropriate. And your closed session motion is to include whom?
I'd recommend the village clerk, the public works director, the budget manager, and the planning director.
You get to stay.
And the village attorney.
Oh, can't forget, yeah. Okay. Further discussion on that motion to go into closed session? No further discussion? Then roll call vote, please.
Trustee Myers, trustee Rick Miller, trustee Baum, trustee Kaminsky, trustee Jan Miller, trustee Nightrider,
Aye.
trustee Pieper. Aye. President Walter.
Aye.
Motion.
Before we take up the open session part of item R, I just want to announce that the next regular village board meeting will be on Monday, July 19th at 7 p.m. And there will not be a board meeting on Monday, July 5th, because of that is the national holiday for 4th of July. So let's go then to the open session portion of item R, which is the location and design of the Public Works Building.
I have just a couple of slides that put together in response to questions that the public were, actually, let me go back before I get into the first slide. I have in response to questions that were asked at the last meeting. I guess before I get to those questions, though, I wanted to just mention the timeline and the time frame that we're on, and reiterate that. And Grafe is not here tonight. They had a conflict. They were unable to be here in person. They did provide information that I'll be presenting this evening. But if the village board wants to move ahead and start construction of the Public Works facility in the spring of 22, what Grafe is strongly recommending is that we issue bids in January of 2022. That over those winter months is the most advantageous time to go through bidding processes for this type of a project. And in order to do that, this is another very difficult decision, but it is something that we're kind of, we need to move towards some direction in that July meeting. And if we're going to go out for bid this winter, we need to start design and bid documents, in late July, early August at the latest. So I think there is some time constraints here. So we're trying to get together the additional information and respond to questions, and I do have some of that information tonight. First of all, the question came up about recycling center operations and consolidating those operations with the remainder of Public Works operations, and specifically at the Division Road site where we're currently located. But I also kind of expanded that to look at what other, if we're looking at other sites, what would it take to do that? Grafe went out, they reviewed the recycling center operations. They did a visit out there to take a look around. They looked at the information available on that site. The Main Street site where the recycling operations are currently located is a total of about 13 acres, and 6.4 acres of that is actively used. There is, and this would be required for the recycling operations, a detention pond that takes up a portion of the space, but right now we're using roughly 6.5 out of 13 acres. The Division Road site only has as reconfigured by Grafe and presented in the last meeting, has about 4.7 acres of usable space. There is an adjacent residential property. There have been conversations in the past that maybe at some point in the future it may become available. That has about 1.8 acres of usable space. However, we need about 12 to 15 acres total, Grafe estimates, to relocate the recycling center. So the math does not work at the Division Road site. We would not be able to, within the footprint that we've been discussing so far, be able to relocate the recycling center operations to that location. Also, if we look back at some of the alternative locations we looked at last week, about half of those would also be eliminated from consideration if we wanted to move the recycling center operations there. That about half of those were not large enough as well. So in other words, combining the recycling center operations with the remainder of the DPW operations limits the places where we could put that, including that would not be possible at the Industrial Road site. Also in the discussions, there are not great benefits from co-locating that site. In fact, as we had that conversation and did that analysis a little bit further, it may not be ideal to locate the recycling center at the same location as the DPW operations themselves, just because of the additional traffic. If you have, there's a lot of residents who use a recycling center, all seen Main Street on a Saturday morning when people are going to drop off. If there would be some sort of an event, maybe a storm where DPW is working overtime doing collections, that could cause some issues as well. And there's not a lot of economies of scale of having the recycling center at the DPW facility. There's not staff traveling back and forth there on a regular basis. We don't gain a lot from having those operations located specifically at the DPW yard. In addition, thought it was worth noting, sewer and water connections are not necessary for recycling center operations. So another possibility for the board to consider in the future is if there is a desire to move recycling center operations from their current location, that could be done, and maybe for less money at another site that didn't have water and sewer connection. That might be an alternative if that's something the board would like to look at now or in the future. Next, this was the second question discussed that came up. As everyone is aware, there's very high costs for building materials, steel, concrete, wood. And the question came up, should the village delay bidding due to high material prices? And I raised that question to Grafe Engineering. They worked with Moore Construction Services, who is an expert in cost estimating. They concurred that January, February is still the best time to bid this type of project. In their response to me for that question, they said they don't feel confident in any sort of prediction of what material prices will look like next spring, that those markets tend to be very volatile. They said the numbers that that they have presented are hedged on the high side to account for normal price swings, not the kind of price swings that we've seen here recently. So, and they believe that commodity costs are starting to stabilize and that they expect that trend to continue over the next several months. And I should have put this in the presentation. They also said that they felt the best protection for the village in the event of some spikes like we're seeing right now is that, number one, when we get to that point, we could delay bidding. If next January we have all of the bid documents prepared, something out of the ordinary happens like we've seen right now, and there's another spike in construction materials, we could decide to delay bidding until the next good window. Or if we receive all of the bids back, we could reject them and say that, no, material prices are too high. We want to delay this. And they felt that was a better course of action than delaying the process at this point in time. So those were the two questions that I had responses to that I thought were that were discussed in open session at the last meeting, and the responses were appropriate for open session. I guess if there's any follow-ups on those, I could answer those at this time. Otherwise, there is one closed session update.
Board, any questions? No. Points for follow-up? No? The motion to go into closed session? So we can just go into closed session? Okay. Anything else to discuss in open session? All right, then we'll be going into closed session. Turn off your microphones, please. We'll give the audio visual time to close up, and those that are not invited to the closed session probably be starting the closed session in a couple minutes.